Blog post 14. Life's defining moments, or my accident and similar events, and how to move past them. As Epictetus said, some things are in our control, while others are not. We control our opinion, our choices, desires, aversion, and in a word, everything of our own doing. We don't control our body, property, reputation, position, and in a word, everything not of our own doing. And he also tells us that freedom isn't secured by filling up on your heart's desires, but by removing your desire. In its essence, Stoic philosophy tells us not to worry about those things that are not in our control, only those things that we can control. And so when life throws at us some tragedy, which inevitably it will at some point, we know that the event itself must become something which we must learn to accept as not of our doing, and instead to focus our energies and efforts on how to respond to the tragedy in a way that still allows us to continue our lives, pursuing our purpose and living daily with goodness, courage, faith, integrity, honour, truth, and humility. This vlog post and the next couple will look less at my bodybuilding career and more so at the accident that ended it and became the event that created the possibilities for me to become something and somebody entirely different from who and what I had been. Now, I say that with the knowledge and the wisdom and positivity that living 10 years with my disabilities have finally given me. But as you will find out, that same event nearly destroyed me, leaving me wheelchair bound and hopeless, often with no apparent light at the end of a tunnel of pain that I felt 24 hours a day. Whether it is an accident or you lose something or someone precious in life, grief and depression may become something that you come to know very intimately. And if this is you, or has been you, or maybe you in the future, then I hope that my experiences serve in some way to help you through such times. And hopefully, even if you never experience such an event, that it opens your mind to what the person right next to you at any given moment of any given day may be going through, and give you an understanding of such battles that have existed in time immemorial within the human soul. At 41 years old, my entire life had been in sports and fitness, specifically in bodybuilding and the gym. 1 year earlier to my accident, I had won the super heavyweight class and the overall at the British Championships for the WPF. I had then placed third at the European Championships and finally fifth at the World Championships in Perpignan, France. After that final competition, standing on stage at the Worlds at 118.7 kilos of desert dry, grainy, shredded muscle, I decided to retire for good from competitive bodybuilding. Although I had previously retired back in 1999, only to return to the stage in 2004. So my for good may not have been totally for good. I chose to retire because I knew that I was never going to be able to beat that physique that I went on stage with that day. Yes, I was only 40 years old, but I honestly didn't think that I could improve on that look as I got older. The prep for that show and the two prior had been brutally hard, enjoyable, but very, very hard on my body, and also time away from my family. And my family had been where I had decided to devote my energies and my time to, especially since my bodybuilding career had meant a selfishness of behavior that I'd wanted to change. The selfishness that goes with being a world level athlete. Ask any Olympian and they and their families will tell you about selfishness, but also about extreme levels of commitment needed in order to win gold. So I was very content in my decision to retire. I was very happy, not only with my 5th place at the Worlds, but also with the physique that I presented to the judges that day. I felt that I had peaked as well as I had ever had done in my career. I was shredded and dry, but yet I was full and aesthetic. I had delivered the 1990s physique I had always longed to bring to the stage, only I'd done it in 2006. I returned home and sold the gym that I owned and ran and went full-time personal training instead. My days were still long, and perhaps there were even more emotional stresses involved, since any good coach will tell you that much of their work isn't about training or nutrition or rest and recovery, but your client's personal issues, whether it's their relationships, their jobs, or their mental health issues, which fortunately I was trained and capable of dealing with, but with its fair share of personal, emotional energy drainage. But that was okay. I love people, so I didn't mind any of that. Well, perhaps I didn't enjoy the text messages at 2 a.m. in the morning and the occasional client becoming too dependent upon me, overly emotionally and psychologically. However, compassion is very important to me, so I still felt as though I was fulfilling my purpose, even when my clients were becoming overly demanding. I was making good money too. My reputation as a bodybuilder and as a coach meant that nearly all of my clients came from word of mouth. And before a couple of months had passed, I had a full client base, with new would-be clients having to go on a waiting list for when someone had either run to the end of their contract and no longer wanted to continue, or they'd either moved away. I was very fortunate that most of my 20 clients, I only ever had 20 at any one time, they stayed with me for years, meaning that they became friends as well as clients. But with the odd one or two obviously dropping away, to allow for a new client to come through gave me some nice variety and new starts to take on. The interesting thing is, and I always felt with being a male heavyweight bodybuilder with what must be described as a very different physique to the normal man and even to the normal fitness coach or personal trainer. But despite this, well over 90% of all of my clients were female, with only 3 of those females ever wishing to compete. And there was only one female bodybuilder amongst those 3. The other 2 were in fitness and in bikini. So it always struck me as very interesting that women chose me as their coach despite me being a bodybuilder. Or was it because I was a bodybuilder? I'm not sure I know. But nevertheless, me being a now somewhat slimmed down 19 stone bodybuilder certainly didn't impede on me getting clients at all. In fact, it helped me get clients. I think it suggested to them that I knew how to lose body fat as well as build muscle, and that I was also capable of extreme discipline with my living and eating to maintain such a physique over so many years. I was also fairly well known in the town that I lived, and my reputation as a grumpy old man, you'd perhaps think so, but actually people always look so much past the muscle. And actually I was known for my very easygoing personality and my people skills, and an ear that was always open to listen to whatever troubles anybody ever had. I think my years owning a gym helped develop that as much as a natural born emotional intelligence. The bottom line though was I had people waiting to be coached, which is a very nice position for any personal trainer to find themselves in. I had a base in a gym in my local town where I didn't pay any rent as long as I brought in 10 new members each month to the gym, which wasn't difficult as it was also where I trained myself. That, and with clients coming in to be trained and people wanting to train where I trained, there was always 10 new members coming in each month, which meant that my fees were being kept 100% to myself without having to pay any rent for the facilities that I was using. I had some fairly well-known clients and also some professional athletes. So my job consisted of everything from basic weight loss and body transformation to elite level strength training and sports training, where an increase of 0.5 of a second in speed could be the difference between gold and silver. My wife had just given birth to our son by then, and so we had 4 children under the age of 8 to care for. Well, she did. Take to school, and the many demanding tasks that being both a mother and a housemaker involve. I had the much easier part of the deal, believe me. I could not have managed the way she did, especially with me having such unsociable hours as a PT. I was out with my first client normally around 6 a.m. and then worked through till late morning, where I always blocked out a 2 hours period where I did my own training and had a meal. I then maybe had a few hours in the afternoon where I managed to get home and see my family. But then I was out again in the evenings to the peak time with clients. Although I did always keep Sundays free from any clients so I could enjoy one whole day each week completely with my family. Now this was the pattern of my life on retirement from my stage for a good year. We were living in a pleasant village in the south of England. I just bought my wife a new car. I bought myself a new car. Things were going seemingly really well, which is often a sign that life has something unexpected coming your way. When one morning, walking down the stairs in my rented home, ready to leave to train a client around about 8 o'clock in the morning, the large square piece of wood in a dog-leg set of stairs slipped from its ledge, and due to there being no reinforcement underneath, fell straight down to the floor a couple of meters below it, and along with that wood I went too. Now I'm not quite sure how I managed to get to the car and then to the hospital, because apparently the 999 service that my wife called said an ambulance wouldn't be available for at least 45 minutes since I was still conscious and breathing. So rather than stay in agony and broken who knows what, I decided to try and crawl to the car somehow. And I managed to do that, get in. My wife drove me to the hospital, accident and emergency. I honestly don't remember any of that. Getting to the car, nor the journey. All I do remember is a team from the hospital coming out to the car with a trolley, a stretcher on a trolley, got me on there and took me into the hospital, where they gave me an injection of something, presumably morphine, which did nothing for the pain. And on telling them it done nothing for the pain, they injected me again with some more of whatever it was they'd given me. This time I did feel a huge relief, and I must have lost consciousness for a few minutes, because when I came around again, I woke up in a room where they were scanning me from head to toe. From the heap on the floor in my house, I knew that my right leg had either been broken or all of the ligaments and tendons had completely snapped, as I could not move it an inch. So when they explained that my entire quadriceps muscle had been ruptured, I wasn't surprised. In fact, if that was all the damage, I thought, I remember thinking, I know how to rehab that. Let's get it reattached and let's get into rehab as quickly as possible. I can do this. Unfortunately, that wasn't the full extent of my injuries. And even worse, I didn't find out the full extent until a year later, with not until close to 2 years later that I found out that the damage was actually life-changing, with little option for any surgical corrections or possible procedures to even alleviate the pain. After 6 months of being in a wheelchair, then on crutches, and finally a stick, the rehab in the gym wasn't going as planned. Pain, whether exercising or even trying to walk, led to further examinations, and finally they did an x-ray. You'd have thought of maybe that would have been one of the first things that they had done, but they didn't. They did an x-ray. They called me that afternoon and told me I had a damaged pelvis. Both of my femoral bones, they wouldn't sit into the hip socket. They were literally sitting on the side of the hip socket, and hence that explained where all the extreme pain was coming from around my hip area. And not only that, on arrival at the hospital, they checked my blood sugars, which had been completely normal. Yet 2 weeks later, my blood sugars had skyrocketed up to between 38 and 42. What had happened is the amount of cortisol produced at the time of the accident had actually caused my pancreas to shut down completely, meaning that I was also now a type 1 diabetic. My initial plans to rehab and get back to work had been thrown a curveball, one that I didn't know how to deal with. A ruptured muscle, yeah, that was something I could deal with. A structural impairment, that was something completely different. 1, 2, then 3 consultants were seen with a view to hip replacements on both sides. However, due to genetically thin pelvic bones in the places where the new femoral heads would sit, it meant that the risk of them smashing through my pelvis, leaving me even in an even worse situation, was a very real probability, and therefore no hip replacements would ever be possible. I was in a new situation in life, one where I had found myself in a place where I no longer had the tools to rectify the problems I had physically. My life had just turned upside down, and the view from there wasn't very pretty. I can tell you that. training, what had once been my life and my career, had become no longer even a question of rehab to getting back to where I was, but training as I had once known it had gone forever. Those days of training legs in Temple Gym with Dorian and Kenny, repping out on the leg press with white hot ferocity and burning intensity, they were just now a memory of something no longer ever possible. So my greatest love, my job, my purpose, my identity had been thrown down the stairs at the same time as I had, or so it seemed as I looked at it at the time. I had some very real physical challenges ahead of me, but to face them with no sense of purpose at the end, that was a mental challenge. That was the biggest battle that I would ever have to face. I couldn't provide for my family. I couldn't train people. I couldn't even train myself. If I wasn't a provider, if I wasn't a coach, if I wasn't a bodybuilder, who exactly was I? And that leads to the biggest question you will ever have to face when life's greatest adversities hit you. Who are you really, and why were you put on this planet? What is your purpose? Those questions took me years to fully answer, but it's in the search for the answers that your recovery truly begins. My advice to you now isn't what I did myself back then, obviously, because I hadn't been through the process needed to find the answers. What I did do initially was I turned my back on the industry completely. The career, the place I had given to, the gym and training. No, I didn't stop training, but I cut off every tie with every person that I knew within the industry. I trained what I could and I rehabbed what I could to improve my injuries and to save me from going insane, and perhaps saving me from something far worse than that. I'll simply say there were many dark nights and much, much darker days and nights during those years than I can care to remember. My first footsteps into my new life, although if you've been following my vlogs, you'll know that I can now enjoy bodybuilding again, although not actually physically compete or anything, nor train as I used to, but at least the thought of bodybuilding and talking about bodybuilding isn't so painful that I can't talk about it anymore or write about it, which is how it used to be back then. The steps were new, tentative ones into new directions, things that I could still do. Things like singing, for example. I'd always loved music and I'd always been able to carry a tune. Although never a great singer, I started to have singing lessons, which made me a good enough one for people to listen to, and perhaps even enjoyed. I auditioned for a band and was accepted, and we rehearsed and we began gigging around my disabilities. I hoped this was going to be possible, but at last, even on stage sat on a stool, it was way too painful to stand. So despite even getting professional gigs, I was forced to quit even before we'd really started even. Another thing I couldn't do, another person I couldn't be, a singer. But then I began to read better books. I've always loved reading and was quite academic when I was at school. Although I chose to go to work rather than go to university back then, I had been offered a place on a degree course at Cardiff University for history and philosophy when I was 18. So I began reading philosophy and great classics, and together with the help of my occupational therapist, decided to apply to go to university and to do a degree with a view to, I'm not sure exactly, but I knew it would be 4 years where I would be learning new things and possibly come out of those 4 years with my new purpose and a new role in life. And that was the second key to my recovery. Thinking about my roles in life as playing, in the acting sense, not in the playful sense. I began to think, what if the first part of my life was a movie? And I got to play the part of a bodybuilder and a coach and a gym owner. And what if life is like a movie? Then I could surely simply decide to play a new role for the second part of my life. Couldn't I? That was a big step. That was a breakthrough in my thinking. Okay, so I was going to play the part of an academic now. Well, what comes with that? A new look, certainly. So I bought a new wardrobe from eBay. I couldn't afford brand new clothes, so I bought nice classic clothes secondhand. And then where would I study? There are universities all over the UK. So now I got the chance to move the family to a better area and perhaps a better place for our children to grow up and to go to school and for us to live. My wife and I looked at the courses on offer and I decided I wanted to study Scottish history. The only downside with that being that it meant moving to Scotland. Or was it a downside? Yes, it was another country move for us. We'd already previously lived in the UK. We'd moved to Australia and then we moved back to the UK, to England near my parents. However, my father had just died as I was starting the course, which meant leaving my mother was going to be even more difficult. But she insisted that I pursue the degree, and my wife agreed to come along and look at some properties in Scotland. Within about an hour of the campus in Perth where I was going to be studying, so we drove up in the autumn of 2009 to take a look around. Hence how we moved to the Highlands near Pitlochry, some 45 minutes from Perth, but accessible enough for me, and with the university offering some lectures online, it wasn't going to be a problem. So I became an academic and I got an honours degree in Scottish history, and my family were actually happier in Scotland, with the children definitely happier, getting a better education for some time and making some great friends. My eldest daughter finding her fiance, who she now has a son and a daughter with. When I went into campus, I always dressed in a suit or smart trousers and a shirt, a tie and a sports coat. Things that would not give away my physique to anyone, as I was still carrying obviously much more muscle than the normal man. And I didn't want anyone there to make quick perceptions as to my personality or my intelligence, which they do tend to do if you're a bodybuilder, sadly. My physical pain was still a big issue. 24 hours a day I was in extreme pain, and the doctors were having to prescribe more and more opiates to control it. My problem was that because the medication affected my mental clarity and thinking and writing, I would always hold off until the afternoon to take any pain relief to get as much work done as I could first thing. which meant that I was constantly chasing the pain, which, if you know anything about pain and pain protocols, you'll know that strategy never works. I managed to get my degree, and I decided to do another one with the view to perhaps becoming a professor myself eventually and teaching in the future. I began a degree in psychology, but the first year was frustrating. Material that I'd already covered in my previous life as a life coach in Australia. So after a year, I switched to a BA honours degree in literature. And that's when things really began to click into place for me. And I had the first smudgy images of my new purpose. Something to do with writing, teaching, maybe lessons of classic literature and helping others into this new world I had found myself in, which I loved. But first, I had to attain the tools of my new trade and get my honours in literature, which took 5 years due to another very bad fall I had in 2017. My damaged hips and now identified damaged spine meant that a wheelchair was now the safest and less painful way for me to get from A to B. However, on some surfaces, a wheelchair just doesn't work. And as I am a completely independent wheelchair user, I will not allow anyone to push me. I always use my own shoulder and arm strength to propel myself along. This time on uneven ground at an archaeological site, I used my crutches and I fell, smashing my left knee again and totally rupturing my left quadriceps this time. At least I now have 2 matching scars going down both kneecaps. The second fall was another big blow and had me housebound for many months, and meant that crutches could only ever now be used in places where I could grab hold of something if I felt my knee giving way or if I stumbled and felt like I was falling. Or at all other times I had to be in the wheelchair. It was now essential, and thankfully the NHS in Scotland provided me with a made-to-measure wheelchair, which meant moving around was much easier. Although a racing wheelchair would be great and allow me to do cardio and perhaps even begin racing, so I would love to get hold of one of those if possible. I was now playing the role of a fully fledged academic and an experienced one with skills which the university wished to use, and I wished to use to further my research into a Scottish author I had done my thesis on, a lady called Nan Shepherd. I was now a researcher as well as an academic, and I was a writer. This playing new roles through life was becoming fun and rewarding, but I had still not quite found my true purpose yet. And without that, you're always left with an uneasy feeling as though you're not quite living as you should be living. Life without design is erratic. As soon as one is in place, principles become necessary. Seneca. How true. Already I was reading Stoic philosophy each morning, and every morning I was vowing to myself to live that day as honestly, as courageously, as full of integrity, as truthfully and as nobly and as justly as I could. Each day was bringing me closer to my purpose, my overruling design for my life. And that, my friend, should be suffering from pain, grief or depression and anxiety is the key to your recovery. I became busy and busier, and yet the busier I became, the more I was getting done. Momentum is truly a force in this universe, and just as it can work against you in your darkest moments, so too it can work for you when you commit yourself to your highest purpose and forego all gratuitous, instantaneous pleasures and acts which never add positivity to your life. They always take away from your integrity, your honor, and your highest self. I was struggling to complete assignments though for university due to having to manage work periods and pain management. But I was also committed to starting my own website, a YouTube channel, and those vehicles which I would need when I was ready to fully commit to that purpose, which was now becoming undoubtedly more clear. I approached the university for a research grant to further my study into Nan Shepherd, which should begin this September. But at the same time, my now frequent phone calls with my oldest and dearest friend, Simon Bisley, was pointing us both towards projects which we both wanted to do together. We want to do a music video, a training video, but most importantly, we're going to be producing a book together, illustrated by him and written by myself, about the characters in mythology renowned for their strength and power. Characters he had never previously had the chance or the opportunity to paint nor sketch, and stories we both felt were important indicators to the natural essence that has been admired and revered throughout history by all civilizations, both east and west, north and south, those of muscular strength and power, whether it be in Thor, Achilles, Samson, Hercules or Heracles, Boudica, the Amazonians, right through to the modern day. Opportunities were beginning to open up, and at the same time, life was pointing me towards things with encounters with people which went beyond the realm of coincidence and chance. The meeting with a man suffering from terrible depression and a lack of purpose in life, suicidal in fact, I spent only perhaps an hour with him, and yet we instantly created a bond of trust and recognition in each other that told each other we had both been in that place. The following day, he met me with news that the night before he had applied for a job as an emergencies telephone receiver. The man who I had said to his face the day before, "Hey, you've got great communication skills," was obviously extremely compassionate, and perhaps they were places in which he should start beginning his search for his new purpose. He had overnight had a breakthrough. Was it the words that I had said, or just happenstance? That night that he had seen the new life that was the perfect fit for him? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But whatever, it made me happy. And also aware that this was definitely a message from the universe that my unique gifts were now needing using, and there was no time to waste. As each day arises, welcome it as the very best day of all, and make it your own possession. We must seize what flees. Seneca. So imagining that I was an actor going through life playing different roles helped me through my physical and mental changes that resulted from my accident. Perhaps that strategy can help you, or maybe not. You will find your own strategy to guide you through, and often you may need professional help if you can get it to help you through these periods. But get through them You will and you can. Yes, I am still disabled. But what is disabled? Am I more disabled than the man who has no purpose, no sense of fulfillment in his life, no precious things that he needs to work hard to provide for and to nurture them? Am I more disabled than the man who goes to work every day hating his job, looking only forward to retirement? And after that, what? Live a life of quiet solitude and calm? No such place exists. We always need our purpose, and without it we are worse than dead. We are turning our backs on the very gifts that nature or God or whatever your belief tells you granted you such gifts. I am now able to talk once again about bodybuilding. It no longer hurts me. Yes, it frustrates me that I can no longer train legs anymore or any body part that I used to. But I can still get to the gym. I can still lift a dumbbell. I can still work hard and feel the blood in my muscle. How about smaller muscles? But that's okay. That's part of me, will never leave me. I guess bodybuilder is a role that I was always meant to play, regardless of my physicality. Now, I'm often asked if I sued the house owner for the faulty stairs or the builder whose fault it was originally. And the answer is no, I didn't. Initially, I wanted to sue, as there was plenty of anger at what someone's lack of care had caused. The house owner was aware of the dodgy stairs and had said that they would get it seen to. So I had instructed a solicitor to take the first steps in taking them to court. I finally chose not to because of my neighbour. You see, my neighbour had witnessed the conversation where the house owner had said about getting the stairs fixed, and my quandary was that she was a very anxious and nervous lady. She'd been retired, and I simply decided it was better for her if she wasn't put through the added stress of having to go to court to give a witness statement. She doesn't know to this day that that's the reason I chose not to sue them. But I'd also got to the point where I realised that if the court case and getting compensation for my injuries and disabilities was all that I was thinking and focusing on, then my recovery was going to be put back, perhaps indefinitely, until it was all over. And I was desperate to move on from that episode, to begin my recovery physically and mentally immediately. Do I regret that decision now? Occasionally I feel that I was due compensation and the onus should have been made to make redress to me. And obviously the financial aspect would be very helpful in our lives. But in hindsight, I think I still would have saved my neighbour from having to go to court and to just let her carry on with her life. Others may feel that it's the wrong choice. I'm sure of that. But that was my decision at the time, and I've lived with it quite happily ever since. Life must go on, and I think it would have been delayed, and my recovery psychologically, mentally, would have been delayed had I focused on compensation. These are the choices we all have to make, and only you can make the right one for you. I hope that you find your purpose. I hope that you find the strategy to guide you through your dark times. Life's awful and undeserved heartaches and grief. If I can help, or if you think I can, please get in touch with me. I would be only too happy to help you if I possibly can. Now, next time, what lessons did I learn during this period? What mistakes did I make? And what real breakthroughs in human understanding did I become privileged to learn? There were many dozens of books read, many deep thoughts and internal discussions, and sadly, for me, no one to listen to me except my own mind, its logic and its intuition. Hopefully, if you ever find yourself in that place, you now have at least one place you know you can come and be listened to. This last year, I have ridden through the Austrian Alps in my wheelchair to amazed trekkers. I've seen the ancient wonders of Egypt. I've researched the wonderful life of one of Scotland's greatest authors and women. I've launched my own website. I've launched my own YouTube channel. I've written scripts for vlogs, for social media posts, and I've reconnected with old friends and decided upon exciting new business ventures with them. Yes, I am still in pain. No, my condition is not any better. In fact, it's deteriorating. But my pain management is under better control, and I feel in better control again of my life. That doesn't mean that life will not throw any more major obstacles my way. It guarantees nothing. But we were always guaranteed nothing. We just often thought we were. Live life as Epictetus suggests. For there are two rules to keep it ready. That there is nothing good nor bad outside my own reasoned choice. And that we shouldn't try to lead events, but to follow them. Who then is invincible? The one who cannot be upset by anything outside their reasoned choice. You can never control events. Control your reaction. Reason with yourself, your new path, and commit yourself fully to what your greatest possible new purpose is. You may have to search for it, and it may take time to find, but the search must start today, for with the beginning of this search becomes the beginning of your recovery. So that's it for this week. I'll expand on all of what I've spoken about today with you next week. So for now, love to you all, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.